Base guard refused to check her ID. Within minutes, 5 generals arrived to help her. The scorching Afghan sun beat down on forward operating base Jericho, painting the dust-choked sky in bruised shades of orange. Dr. Eris Thorne stepped off the transport vehicle, the soles of her boots crunching against gravel streaked with rust-colored dust. She was small, unassuming, with graying hair tied neatly in a bun and glasses that seemed too delicate for the harsh environment. Anyone seeing her would mistake her for a scholar lost in the desert, but those who knew her understood she was a different breed altogether. A young sergeant leaned against the sandbag checkpoint, chewing tobacco and smirking. "ID," he barked, not bothering to make eye contact. Eris handed over her laminated Department of Defense credentials, her movements calm and deliberate. The sergeant glanced at them, scoffed, and waved her away. "No escort, ma'am. Colonel Madsen is busy. You wait. I am cleared at level 5, Triple Alpha Cipher Priority. You will check my credentials," she said, her voice measured, precise. The sergeant laughed. "Priority Cipher? Not for a supply analyst. Step over to the bench." Eris tilted her head slightly, eyes unblinking. "Your name is Cole. You're 24 from Omaha, months in country, expert rifle scorer, but reckless under pressure. Scan my ID." Cole froze. The smirk faltered. He didn't know how she knew. Information that should have been buried in a database thousands of miles away. But he was a soldier. She was a civilian. This was his gate. Eris did nothing further. She pulled a small satellite phone from her satchel, pressed a single button, and ended the transmission. Seconds later, the gate's comm system crackled to life. "Gate 1, Colonel Madsen here. Why are you detaining a Priority 1 asset?" Cole scrambled, pale with disbelief. The gate slid open. Eris Thorne walked past, silent, resolute. She had arrived, and nothing would stop her from taking command of the situation. Inside the Tactical Operations Center, TOC, the air was cool and humming with low-grade panic. Rows of consoles glowed green and blue, operators busy with satellite feeds, comms, and drone tracking. Colonel Madsen, a thick-necked veteran with a bulldog's intensity, looked up as Eris entered. He saw exactly what Sergeant Cole had seen. A civilian. A woman. An outsider. A logistics analyst. "Dr. Thorne," he said, voice clipped, "welcome to Jericho. Apologies for the confusion at the gate." The words were polite, but the undertone was unmistakable. She was a distraction. Eris didn't flinch. She moved to the auxiliary console in the corner, ignoring the main command chair. She began her work, fingers dancing across the keyboard. The operators barely noticed her as she probed the base's systems, mapping vulnerabilities in power distribution, sensor networks, and communications. Things overlooked, patched sloppily, or forgotten entirely. Major Evans, standing nearby, raised an eyebrow. "You're not looking at logistics data," he said, curiosity edged with skepticism. "I'm analyzing the system as a resource," Eris replied, eyes never leaving the screen. "Information flow is the most critical resource of all." Minutes passed. Then the first anomaly appeared. The Predator drone feed over Tangi Valley blinked out, replaced by static. Then another feed, and another. "Sir," a young lieutenant shouted, "we've lost all satellite uplinks. Primary and secondary channels are down." Madsen's jaw tightened. "Switch to terrestrial comms. Spectre team status." "Negative, sir," another operator called. "All channels jammed." Solid wall of white noise across the spectrum. Emergency generators groaned as the lights flickered. The main tactical map, hours of painstaking satellite data, dissolved into a chaotic blur. The Spectre team, deep in the valley with high-value assets, was trapped. Their advanced systems were now useless. Madsen's fury mounted, but in the corner, Eris remained calm. She unplugged her console from the compromised network, retrieved a tangle of wires, and attached a custom interface to a long-forgotten analog trunk line. The archaic interface came alive, slow and rudimentary, but entirely secure. While the talk descended into chaos, Eris Thorne was methodical. She bypassed the digital battlefield entirely, preparing to wrest control from the attackers by using forgotten infrastructure and sheer ingenuity. She had been underestimated at the gate. Now, the base's survival, and the lives of an elite team pinned in a deadly ambush, rested entirely in her hands. Eris worked swiftly, almost invisibly, her calm a sharp contrast to the chaos around her. She bypassed the compromised digital network entirely, connecting through the old analog trunk line. The interface was clunky and slow, but secure, a skeleton of Jericho's original communications infrastructure. Her screen flickered to life with a simple command prompt, archaic and unforgiving, but to her, it was a language she could read. She began sending low-voltage pulses to the base's emergency generators, reactivating circuits that had been cut off in the cyber attack. Relays deep in the floors of Jericho clicked into life with deafening clanks, and one by one, lights returned to full brightness. Colonel Madsen froze, watching the room come back online. "What the hell?" he muttered. Eris didn't answer. She was already on the next step. Communications. The enemy's jamming was overwhelming, flooding the spectrum with white noise, but she scanned the bands for a fluctuating narrow frequency, fractions of a kilohertz wide. It was unstable, barely usable, but it was enough for her microburst transmission protocol, a digital Morse code capable of punching through the noise. Major Evans, standing behind her, could barely comprehend what he was seeing. "Doctor, what are you doing?" "Re-establishing command and control," she said quietly. Fingers flying across the keyboard, she uploaded a packet of data to a semi-retired satellite network she had designed years ago. A network she still held the master key to. On the screen, raw thermal signatures began streaming down. Spectre team's disabled vehicles, pinned operators, and enemy positions revealed themselves in a coded, abstract language only she could interpret. She didn't just see the battlefield, she became its eyes. "Sir," Evans whispered, awe creeping into his voice. "She's guiding them." Eris relayed grid coordinates, enemy positions, and extraction routes to Spectre team using her microburst protocol. Every command was precise, every detail calculated. Despite being isolated and virtually offline, she had re-established oversight of the battlefield. Colonel Madsen, watching her orchestrate a rescue from the corner of the TOC, realized the depth of his misjudgment. The civilian he had dismissed as inconsequential was now the key to saving both his team and the high-value asset in the Tangi Valley. Alarms blared, lights flickered, and operators shouted, but Eris remained steady, a quiet storm of competence and calm, turning a dire situation into a controlled, methodical response. Spectre team, moving under her guidance, began executing the fighting withdrawal. The enemy, blinded by the sudden loss of their digital advantage, faltered. And in the TOC, all eyes were on the small, unassuming woman in the corner who had become the unseen commander of the battlefield. Eris Thorne didn't wait for recognition. Her focus was absolute. With the old satellite connection humming, she began guiding Spectre team through the Tangi Valley. Every movement, every potential threat was tracked and relayed in real time. RPG teams, enemy snipers, and armored vehicles were mapped on her mental grid, then transmitted as precise coordinates to the team. "Enemy 2M, behind ridge. Flank left," she typed. "Suppressing fire, advance west." Spectre team, confused by the sudden silence on their regular comms, followed her instructions with an almost reverent trust. Every command Eris sent was a lifeline, turning chaos into orchestrated action. A drone overhead, blind to video feed but armed, received manual targeting coordinates from her. She calculated trajectories and firing solutions with surgical precision. Back in the TOC, Colonel Madsen could barely keep up. The main digital screens remained dark, but Eris's corner console displayed a cascade of thermal data, grid overlays, and text-based instructions. Each line of code she sent was a missile, a warning, a guide. "Reaper is in position. Firing solution locked. Danger close," she typed. Her fingers didn't pause. Seconds later, the drone unleashed a Hellfire missile, striking an enemy RPG team before they could hit Spectre's withdrawal path. The team's leader's voice came through the microburst protocol, calm but filled with relief. "Good hit, Oracle. You saved us." The realization spread through the room. Oracle, the legend, the ghost in the machine who had designed the Veil, the entire strategic defense network. Colonel Madsen's mind raced. He had dismissed her as a mere analyst, yet here she was, controlling the battlefield from the shadows, using a forgotten network and ingenuity to outmaneuver a sophisticated cyber-physical attack. Eris continued to direct the withdrawal with unerring accuracy. She anticipated enemy movements before they happened, rerouting the team around ambushes, neutralizing threats with drones, and using terrain to their advantage. Each pulse of data she sent was a life saved, each command a calculated strike against chaos. Finally, after what seemed like hours but was only minutes, Spectre team reached the secondary extraction point. The enemy, disoriented and blind to their own surroundings, had been neutralized. The team reported all personnel secure, their asset intact. Colonel Madsen, who had been frozen in awe, finally exhaled. The room, once filled with frantic operators shouting over alarms and dead consoles, fell into a heavy silence. All eyes were on Eris, the quiet figure who had restored order and won a battle that had seemed lost before it even began. She didn't celebrate. She simply continued monitoring, ensuring the team remained safe, her hands flying over the keyboard, checking every system, securing every channel. The fight was over, but the work was not. The chaos of the Tangi Valley had passed, but the talk remained electric with tension. Operators sat in stunned silence, watching Eris Thorne move with quiet authority across her console. Colonel Madsen's earlier arrogance had evaporated entirely, replaced by awe and an uncomfortable awareness of how completely he had underestimated her. The main comms panel, dormant for over an hour, flickered to life. This time it wasn't just drones or tactical grids, it was a secure Pentagon priority line. 5 faces appeared on the screen. 4-star generals, each framed by the sterile briefing room of the Joint Chiefs. General Vance, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, was at the center. His gaze swept past Colonel Madsen and the TOC operators, locking instead on the small, unassuming woman who had commandeered the battle from a corner console. Oracle, status report. Vance's voice was crisp, commanding, and yet carried the weight of relief. Eris didn't flinch. She typed quickly, her fingers flying across the keyboard, translating raw thermal data into actionable tactical information. Her voice, calm and precise, carried through the secure line. Acknowledged. The attackers penetrated the outer layers of Jericho's network. I have activated a tertiary failsafe protocol, Chimera. Command and Control is now operating through an isolated analog system. Spectre team is pinned, but I have established a microburst data link to provide tactical oversight. The generals absorbed her report, their expressions shifting from concern to admiration. They were not speaking to a civilian. They were speaking to Oracle, the architect of the Veil, the living legend who had designed the global strategic defense network. The same figure whose existence had been whispered in secure briefing rooms for years. "What do you need from us, Oracle?" General Vance asked. There was no hesitation, no command, just a willingness to assist the person who had just saved an entire operation from catastrophe. "I need you to blind the enemy's communication satellite, Cosmos," Eris said, her fingers already executing commands. "Their coordination is crippling our units. Deploy the exploit now. I will use the window to direct Spectre's withdrawal and neutralize their ambush." "Consider it done," Vance replied immediately. Within moments, the full weight of the U.S. military apparatus was responding to the direction of the woman sitting quietly in the corner. Colonel Madsen, standing behind her, felt the full force of his previous mistakes. He had dismissed her, ordered her to stay in the shadows, and insulted the single most important strategic asset in the region. Now, she commanded the highest authorities in the Pentagon and controlled the battlefield from a corner console. His career, his pride, irrelevant in the presence of Oracle. In the talk, the room had shifted from panic to reverence. The smirks and scoffs of Spectre operators vanished, replaced by a deep, almost sacred respect. Every command she issued, every data packet she transmitted was a masterclass in precision, strategy, and calm authority. Eris didn't look up from her screen. She was already anticipating the next threat, already tracing contingencies, already ensuring the team's safety. The legends were real. Oracle was real, and she was here, quietly turning chaos into order. The battle had ended, but the Tiok remained alive with the low hum of restored systems. Screens blinked back to life, showing maps, tactical overlays, and the now secure positions of Spectre team. Operators, exhausted but exhilarated, methodically logged after action reports. Colonel Madsen paced the room, a man transformed, his arrogance replaced by humility, his pride tempered by witnessing true mastery. Eris Thorne, however, sat quietly at the small corner console she had chosen from the start. She had declined the command chair, preferring the familiar territory of her own workspace. Her fingers moved with meticulous care as she cleaned her glasses with a microfiber cloth, a quiet ritual amid the aftermath of chaos. She had restored command and control, saved lives, and revealed herself to be a strategic force of unparalleled skill. Yet, to her, this was just work. Colonel Madsen approached, holding 2 heavy ceramic mugs of black coffee. He set one beside her console, the steam curling upward in the cool, conditioned air. He lingered, searching for words that could adequately convey the depth of his respect and regret. None came. Instead, he simply looked at her, letting silence speak the truth. He had been humbled, and she had been victorious. Eris picked up the mug, wrapping her hand around its warmth. She glanced briefly at him, offering a small, almost imperceptible nod, their unspoken acknowledgement complete. Respect had been earned, measured not in medals, but in recognition of skill and authority. The operators and generals watched from a distance, still processing what they had witnessed. Even Spectre team, back from the Tangi Valley, made a point to walk past her console. No words were exchanged, just deliberate nods of respect from battle-hardened soldiers. The gesture spoke louder than any commendation. Colonel Madsen returned to his command chair, his voice regaining its authority, though softened by understanding. Orders were issued to launch a quick reaction force to secure the area and ensure all assets were recovered. Systems were monitored, verified, and logged. Every detail mattered, but the overwhelming truth was clear. Eris Thorn had saved the day. Outside, the sun began to rise over the Kandahar Basin, painting the dust-choked sky in bruised purples and soft oranges. The long night of chaos had ended, and a fragile calm settled over forward operating base Jericho. Yet for Eris, the work was never truly done. The war of logistics, intelligence, and resource flows continued relentlessly. She sipped her coffee, eyes scanning supply routes, analyzing the movement of critical materials, and ensuring that the lifeblood of the military machine remained secure. In the quiet corner of the talk, the legendary Oracle had returned to her world of observation and analysis. The battle was over, but the war, and her role in it, was ongoing. She was the unseen hand guiding the flow of information and resources, the silent guardian ensuring the success of operations that others could barely comprehend. For Colonel Madsen and the operators, the lesson was indelible. Authority and rank could command attention, but power, true power, came from skill, vision, and mastery. And in the corner of that command center, a small, unassuming woman had demonstrated it all. Eris Thorn adjusted her glasses, took another sip of coffee, and returned to her console. Outside, the desert wind carried the scent of iron and grit, a reminder that the battlefield never truly slept. She was ready. The quiet logistics analyst had become a legend. Oracle was watching. Oracle was in control, and the flow of information, the lifeblood of war, remained in capable hands.